Thank you so much to everyone for joining today's Pandas and Prose. We'll just give folks another minute or two to join us for today's chat. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us for today's Pandas and Prose event. My name is Jenna Bonello, and I will be your esteemed host for today. Before we begin, I just wanted to go over a few logistics. This is a Zoom webinar, which means all participant cameras are off and the audio is on mute, but you're able to ask questions through the chat feature and also the Q&A feature. So please ask your questions throughout. We welcome them for this discussion. And this event is being recorded. This event is tied to all of WWF's efforts around communicating about climate change. As you all know, Climate Week begins next week in New York. This summit brings together leaders from public, private, nonprofit sectors to drive climate action, but also to celebrate progress. And so we wanted to have a discussion around climate given this and how the arts, I think writing specifically, can play a role in getting people to care about climate change and taking action. So today I am joined by Dr. Christa Anderson, WWF's Director of Climate Science and Carbon Metrics. Dr. Anderson has 15 years of experience working on conservation, climate change, land use, and forests. Dr. Anderson is a contributing author to the IPCC 6th Assessment Report and has worked in over 10 countries. And we're just beyond thrilled to have Ben Okri here with us today to talk about his work, his book, Tiger Work, which I have in front of me. It was so incredibly beautiful, and I'm very excited to dive in. Ben is a poet, novelist, essayist, short story writer, anthologist, and playwright. He has also written film scripts. His work have won numerous national and international prizes, including the Booker Prize for Fiction. And then in 2023, Ben wrote Tiger Work, or published Tiger Work, poems, stories, and essays about climate change. And this powerful collection of both fiction and nonfiction writing serves as a reminder of the beauty of the earth and the importance of addressing the climate crisis with clarity, artistry, and passion. And like I said, I am just so eager to dive in. And so without further ado, Christa, over to you.
Thank you, Jenna. And again, thank you so much, Ben, for joining us. We are honored to have you with us here for Pandas and Prose. You know, we invited you here just because we at WWF, of course, we work a lot on climate change. And, you know, we're in every realm from protecting and planting trees, supporting climate policy, clean energy, resilience. I myself, as the director of climate science in our climate team, I personally work a lot talking to companies to help them set strong climate targets. And you also work on climate change. You have a new book out, as everyone just heard, this summer called Tiger Work, this collection of short stories, essays, and poems. I had the pleasure to read this book, and I personally have a lot of questions to pose to you about it. So to get started, I just want to jump right in, and I'd love to hear, Ben, whatever you want to open with, but I also want to hear, as an acclaimed author, you had the opportunity to write about anything you wanted to. What made you turn to climate change, my favorite topic, as a topic for your latest book?
Well, it turns out that I've been, like most people, aware of what am I doing? Before I start, I want to say what a pleasure it is to be here and to be part of this conversation and on this very unique platform. And I just think it's so fitting because our dreams and our hopes kind of align on this. And this is a very great moment to amplify it. You know, it's impossible now, I think, for any intelligent human being to truthfully avoid the implications of climate change on our lives. I mean, you can try and avoid it, you can try and deny it, but your body knows it, your intelligence senses it. It's something has shifted in the globe, something has shifted in the atmosphere of the world, something has shifted in the earth, something has shifted in the weather. It's been going on for a while, and it's the universe's, it's the Earth's response to many of the things that we are doing. It took me a while to get around to this, for the very simple reason that it's quite difficult to write about a topic like climate change. The tendency has to write kind of to deal with it as a species of terror, a species of doom, a species of a certain kind of apocalyptic writing. But I think it's much more profound than that, and also much more intimate. It's as intimate as our breathing. And I think it's the single most important issue of our age. It's the single most difficult, the single greatest challenge that the human race has had to face in thousands and thousands of years. We're at an incredible crossroad, a turning point, and we have to make a choice, whether we're going one kind of direction or another, whether we're going being the same kind of people we've always been, to create the circumstances that we see every day in the news, every day in our weather, every day in Europe and in Africa and in America, whether we go down that road to its logical and unacceptable conclusion, or whether we now start to try and become a different species of human being. For me, it's a turning point. It is about climate change, but it is also fundamentally about what kind of human beings do we want to be. It's a moment. It's for me. It's a moment of vision. It's a moment of crisis. It's a moment of calamity. It's a moment of catastrophe. But it's also a moment of vision. It's the one language I don't hear among politicians. But it's the biggest wake-up call the human race has ever had. But it is also a great moment when the human race can renew itself. This is what I find particularly exciting about it.
Yeah, and I love that. That's something that I took away from reading your book too, is like this balance of this like total terror and tragedy, but also the promise of hope. There's hope there. And it's clear in that framing that it's something you thought about a lot. I'm always curious, and I ask lots of people I meet, do you remember when you very first learned about climate change as an idea at all? You know, most of us, I certainly didn't learn in grade school or anything. Do you remember when you first came across climate change, or if not that, when you came to see it as a crisis? Was there something happening in your life, or what was it that made climate change salient initially?
It was a memory that came back later on, and it was an indelible memory. There are two, actually. One is, I've told this story often of growing up in Nigeria, forests all around where we grew up. When you wanted to play, you went into the forest. When you wanted to dream, you went into the forest. When you wanted to heal people of their various illnesses, the old ones just went into the forest. They plucked something. They took a root. They took a stem. They took a leaf. They squeezed it. They put it into a drink, and you got better. The forest was there. You go to school, you come back. A portion of it's gone. You go to school again, you come back. Great gaps. You go to secondary school, you come back, and it's mostly gone. You go to university and come back, and it's wiped out completely. Now, what's been happening? You've been growing up. You've been watching great big trucks going by, these logging trucks with great big timber sort of on the backs of them. Vast numbers of them thundering up the road, away from the forest up to the coast. And you made no connection between the gaps in the forest, the loss of that vital source of mythology and nourishment, and those trucks. What we were watching was our future slowly being eroded right in front of us, and we didn't have a name for it. And it wasn't climate change, but it was the beginning of the contribution towards what will become climate change, and a symbol of all the other kinds of destruction taking place throughout Africa and throughout the world. Trees, water, air, fossil fuel, endless burning of fossil fuel in the atmosphere, the pollution, the breathing, the lungs of children. It just crept into every part of your life. But it took a while before we gave it a name. And in many parts of Africa, we haven't given it enough of a name yet to see that this is not something that's done by the gods. This is not done by. It's a consequence of what we're doing, what our politicians are doing, and we're the ones who can change it.
It's such a powerful image and so striking that you share that. As you know, I think I live in Africa. I live in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, and I really, in your book too, you talk about this, you know, that Africa is a continent that will suffer the worst impacts of climate change, and also there's a sort of need or opportunity for more information, or there are challenges in information sharing. When you just said about the gods, you reminded me, last week I went out, I had the opportunity to go out kayaking. I came back and it poured rain. It's not supposed to rain here right now. And I asked the person who's a fisherman who helped me bring my boat in, I said, gosh, why is it raining right now? And he said, only God can know. Only God can know. You know, which is true for him, and also so striking, because for me, my first thought, of course, as a climate scientist, my perspective is like, okay, now we're looking at climate change right here. But there's such a variety of views that you see. I'd love to hear more about that as you wrote, sort of, like I said, the worst impacts of climate change experience in Africa, also a contributor. Can you expand on what you think about how to work on these challenges, particularly in your experience in Africa?
Well, the African side of the equation is a very poignant one. Least offenders and will be the worst sufferers. But to create a perfect triangle, I think Africa is also going to be can also be part of the solution, part of the renewal, because of its vast land surfaces, because of the possibility of its forests, of its rivers, the possibility of reversing so much of the fossil fuel despoilation. You know, so I feel Africa can also be part of the solution, but I feel the climate struggle has to itself. We have to find a way of making it enter into the mythology of ordinary people. Because right now there are a lot of activists in Africa, a lot of the younger generation of politicians are aware of climate change and see how it's going to affect Africa. But I feel it's something that should enter into the thinking of ordinary people. We need to create a new mythology for it. We need to have a place for it, because till it has a place in the mythology of people, it doesn't become real in their experiences. Because in addition to being very practical people, we're also very mythological people. We like to understand like your fisherman, we like to understand the big things that are happening to us through familiar narratives of the world. And I find this is true in the language of even indigenous people across the world, that they have a new kind of narrative about how to explain what's happening to them in terms of climate. It's no longer just the gods; it's the gods are angry because we have done so and so. There's a very important narrative aspect to this, and once people get that, they are part of the struggle. They're part of its solution. They're part of the new generation that can begin to change this.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that. Thinking of the rain, I remember that I know that you have been writing on climate change, but around themes of environment for really a long, long time. I know at one point you told the story of becoming a writer, and it was partly while listening to rainfall on the roof, that this environment thread has really been constant through your life, like you explained, seeing the forest disappear, seeing the changes in the environment, always asking about the weather. I'm so curious to hear, building off of what you write about climate change and tiger work, how does that translate into your daily life, and what you recommend that we think about more, what we're missing in our regular daily lives?
Oh, that's such a big question. My goodness, what are we missing more? I think we're missing the intimate dimensions of the terror that we don't want to face. Really, it's the hardest thing. I go around London, I give readings, I go around the country, I travel a lot, talk to people. And everywhere you go, people say more or less the same things. This thing is too big for them to deal with. They ask you, how are we supposed to deal with it? How are we supposed to deal with this thing that is so big? What can me, poor individual like me, what can I do? And I say that three things you can do. You can lend it your voice. Your voice is very important. Your voice as a citizen, as a citizen with the light and the power to cast your vote in such a way that you can actually divert the direction of government towards, you can make it the single most important thing that any government has to deal with and face. We can do that. I really believe, quite apart from the composting, the things we can do in our daily lives, cutting down on unnecessary travel, cutting down on the way in which we buy our clothes. I was in Dubai and learned that a single shirt that you buy, the amount of energy that goes into the making of one shirt is shocking. And the amount of energy that goes into washing and laundering, all of these aspects continue. The waste of energy is locked into what has become the wastefulness of modern daily life. To be conscious of that is really powerful. To cut down on flying, I don't think people need to fly nearly half as much as we do. But above all, I think it's the power of our votes to make climate the most important subject or issue that our governments have to face. We have to make it such that if they don't deal with this issue, they don't get to govern. And it isn't our power. The thing that strikes me also is that across the world, the anti-climate change lobby has become so powerful because of their attachment to fossil fuel, that they have slowly managed to make protesting against oil drillings and fossil fuel exploration. They've come to make protesting against that illegal, which is an extraordinary feat of the misuse of democratic power. I find that one of the strangest acts of political irony, that people who are protesting to actually save the planet, they've made that very attempt to save our planet illegal, extraordinary. We have to undo this, and we have to do this with the power of our votes and the power of our voices. I think for me, that's the most powerful thing. If we can awaken that strength in people, awaken that awareness that we're not powerless, we can do things in our lives. We can cut down on all aspects of waste in our lives. We can spread the word, but most powerful of all is the power of making governments feel how much we care about this world.
That's so nice, that contrast of, we see the crisis and we have a path forward that with hope, a hopeful path forward that includes a solution. I wonder, Ben, would you be willing to do a reading for us?
I'd love to. I'm going to read. Normally I read from the first big poem in the book, but this time I'm going to do something different. I'm going to read. It's from Tiger Work. It's just come out in America and everywhere. I'm going to read from a poem called The Devil's Fuel, or I Sing the Dawn of Bright, Fresh Energy. And I'm going to read section 7. And I said to the earth, be still. Yield up no more dead force that's trapped in coal or oil or cinnabar or magnesium or asbestos or cobalt, or tantalum, or lithium. And I said to the sun, teach us to utilize those endless rays that have open hands at their tips. Bring us cosmic bounty. And I said to the wind, turn the turbines, and to the tides, speed up the wheels. And again to the sun that spreads its gold over the vast unused deserts. Burn away our illusions, our sickness of heart that makes us cultivate death in our industries. Unleash the innocent imagination that we may draw a paradise closer with the work of our hands and the new century of our inventions. And I said to the gardens, spread flowers over the rich deadlands of our dried thought. Send the fragrance of meadows through the sleep of our children, and teach our leaders to will calm splendors, better realities for our destructive times.
Thank you so much for sharing that. You know, I also want to share one of my favorite quotes from Tiger Work, from your book. I love reading. I read a lot, and I have 2 sisters who also read a lot. my older sister in particular, when she reads, she'll oftentimes write down her favorite quote from a book and send it to me in the mail on a postcard. We're very old-fashioned that way. So I picked my favorite quote from this book. I sent it to her in the mail. It just went in the mail today, and it's this. I won't do it justice the way you can read it, but I'll tell you what it says. You'll have to go read it for yourself. It's not given to many people to sense the end of time approaching. I can't think of any who had the data indicating that it was coming, who had the facts pouring at them every day, and who carried on as if everything were normal. I think one of the reasons that really resonated for me, of course, as I'm a climate scientist, I think, my God, it's true. We have so much information. Nobody's ever been in a position like this. We can think of huge environmental disasters, wiped out entire civilizations or regions, but they didn't know it was coming. And we know, and somehow that's mobilized us or seemed like it's too big a problem to address. I thought you presented that so powerfully.
Oh, thank you. It's absolutely true. Here we are in the midst of the most bountiful time of information that the human race has ever known. My goodness, it's one of the reasons I wanted to have this conversation with you, that we are in a time of tremendous fertility in our inventions, our thoughts, our possibilities, our science, our communication. And at the same time, we use this same tremendous possibility, the same imagination and capacity to be doing the very things that's helping to bring about the destruction that we don't want. The same force used in two different ways. When you ask me what is my basis for hope, I say it is that tremendous boundless imagination that we have, this great will, this great love. We human beings, when we're up against it, when the crisis is clear to us, we are capable of doing astonishing things very, very, very fast. The last pandemic showed that, when we're up against it, we can be amazing. It's the reason why I am not terrified that we're going to bring about our doom and the stupidity of the things that we're doing. But we have to, as you are doing, Christa, we have to be aware, we have to be passionate, we've got to be brave, we've got to be courageous. This is not something to be paralyzed about. This is the biggest fight we've ever had to fight. It's a beautiful one. I think it's time for a new kind of humanity. I think it's time for a new kind of future. I think the human possibility hasn't started yet. We're just on the cusp. We're just on the edge of a breakthrough of a new way of being, of a new way of creating, a new way of living, a new way of harvesting and enjoying this planet, its seas, its air, the diverse nations, the vast possibilities of peoples. We're just on the cusp. And this is a great test. For me, the climate change disaster, the climate change crisis is the great test for humanity. Who are you going to be? What are you going to be? You're going to take all that beauty and destroy it, or you're going to take all that beauty and make a real beautiful, a great rich world for all of human beings. Start a new story, a new chapter on this beautiful planet.
If we were in the room together right now, I feel like everything you're saying, I'd just be jumping up out of my seat and just applauding. This has been such a beautiful conversation, and we have a few audience questions that I'd love to ask of you, Ben, and you too, Christa. But one, going off of what you had just been discussing, really, but for those maybe who haven't picked up a copy yet of Tiger Work, you talk about on page 187 about existential creativity, what you describe as creativity at the end of time. And that really resonated with me. And so I just wonder if you'd be able to elaborate a bit on that, and just to describe further what you mean by existential creativity.
Well, it's exactly as Christa said in that beautiful quote she sent into her sister. Here we are, we've got all the information, it's pouring at us, we can't avoid it. It's there in the news every day. We in a sense, if we don't do the right thing as a race, if we don't gird up our courage and get through this chapter, we are in a sense, possibly in the last chapter of the human race. You can sense it. We're in the last chapter of our species dying every day, where a crisis in the world of insects, where we're in a very, very, very strange place in the human chapter. Now, as a writer, to be aware of this is extraordinary. It's never happened. It's never happened to us before. Existentialism was dreamt up in the 40s and the 50s by writers like Camus and Sartre, who were dealing with the apocalypse that was the Second World War. That's nothing compared to what we're dealing with right now. We are dealing with creativity at the end of time. What is the implication of that for the writer? What does it mean? For me, it means suddenly you look at the art of writing differently. You look at the world that you're writing about differently. If you're saying farewell to a world, how do you write about it? What do you write about it with? What kind of spirit do you write? Do you write in a spirit of tragedy or a spirit of joy? Do you write in a spirit of celebration or a spirit of praise? Do you write about what we're losing, and each day we're losing marvelous things, or do you write about the hope to come? Existential creativity wakes one up. It brings one to the full awareness of the responsibility of our art. It's something that I think that creative people have to embrace, because otherwise you are not joining up the facts of the world today and your reality in it. We have to join these things up. The minute you join this up, it oxygenates your relationship with your craft. It's like a bolt of light to the head that has to be used in a new way.
I hope everyone can realize that sense of urgency. And I think hopefully the work that World Wildlife is doing is helping people find what their inner passions are, right? Because no matter what you do, that's part of why we're having this conversation, whether you are a scientist in the field or a politician who can create policies or an artist, right? Everyone has a role to play.
Absolutely. The existential creativity spreads out, not just in the realm of artists, but in the realm of all the people who create. And whether it's scientists, whether it's mothers, whether it's friends, whether it's makers of carpets, so we're all in this big story together, and we're all involved in this existential truth at this moment. Which, by the way, doesn't have to be tragic. It can be an existential truth that leads one to a more profound sense of humor about the richness of life. There's no way of telling where this facing up to this moment can lead one's art and one's spirit.
But I love that you just said that, actually, because a question that Tara writes for us is, why is it important to foster a sense of love for the natural world instead of instilling a sense of terror or fear for the threat that climate change represents? Can you speak to the fierce kind of love you talk about in Tiger Work?
Yeah, we need both parts. The terror alone is not enough. The terror alone has the capacity to shut down. We live in an age of anxiety. There's a lot of anxiety amongst young people. A lot of young people that, I speak to them, they get up in the morning, they're anxious. They're anxious. What can they do? Who are they? It's too big for them. It's too big for me. It's this sense of information, of terror, of facts coming at you, washing over you. The terror can paralyze, but the love awakens and energizes. The love amplifies the senses. The love, and there's much to love. The air that we breathe, the sunlight, the earth, people, children, trees, gardens, dogs, cats. We live in the midst of, one of the great marvels of the universe. It really, really is. So I think we need both. We need both this sense of this fierce love, because without this love, it's love that gives value. It's love that gives value to the things that we care about. It's not the money. It's not the money. It's not the monetary dimension. It's not even the sacrifice. It's the love. Love gives the true measure of things, and that measure is priceless. So the terror on the one hand, the love on the other, and creativity somewhere in the middle. That's what we need.
It's beautiful. Thank you so much, Ben. And actually, a couple of years ago, World Wildlife Fund had launched an effort called Love It or Lose It, basically speaking to just that, right? Like how we really need to show our love for these things, or at risk of losing them. I didn't know if there were any other final closing remarks from Ben or Christa that you'd like to impart on our audience before we close out for today.
I want to ask Christa. Christa, what is it that keeps you going? What is it that keeps you, puts that smile of spirit in you that makes you continue with your scientific work in the face of all of this data? How do you keep going?
Well, two reflections. One is that I felt so renewed by reading your book. You know, sometimes you do get sort of, I'm working in the data side, I'm building models. You can feel, even though it's my day-to-day work to work on climate change, like you're not there working on it when you're, you know, responding to emails. So I so appreciated that chance to have an exchange or to read something from a different format, you know, it's like hearing new music or looking at a new body of art, to just see the problem in a fresh way and think like, oh yeah, somebody else is thinking about these problems. So that was really a source of inspiration for me, and something that definitely I look to when I'm really stuck in my work, to say like, let's take a new perspective on this, hear somebody else's point of view, and really let that be refreshing. And then the other one that I would mention, and I wonder if it resonates for you as well, is like, I have two young kids who really inspire me to work more. And I noticed that as a theme of your book. And I know you have a young daughter, and I imagine that has changed your thinking and acting as well on climate change and the environment.
Oh, profoundly, profoundly. Because you realize what you should have realized all along, actually, that, you know, you're bequeathing them the world that they may or may not be able to live in. You know, it's we're either giving them a poison inheritance, or we're giving them an inheritance of possibility. It's terrifying to become a parent. You suddenly feel not just responsible for the child, but for the world that they're going to live in. And I want to add to what you said, Christa, about another set of two things that I find very, very helpful. And it's the fact that we're partly responsible for all that we're doing. And it's because we drained from the universe, we drained from nature, its sacred dimension. And I talk about resacralizing nature. It's what our ancestors did. Ancestors, you know, they saw rivers, and they made rivers into deities. They saw forests, and they made forests into deities. It's not because they were stupid or just given to anthropomorphic meditations all the time. It was their way of elevating the beauty and the value of what they were nourished by. We don't need to make rivers gods, but we need to resacralize rivers. We need to resacralize nature. And above all, we need to resacralize one another. We entered an age in which we've drained our fellow human beings of the mystery of the magic of what it is to be human. You know, we need to resacralize our fellow human beings. We need to put the magic, even a little bit of the divinity back into one another, so that we would have a bit more respect for our world and for one another. And I want to save it and protect it. I think that dimension is also important.
Yeah, agreed.
Likewise. Well, thank you both so much. It has been truly such an honor. Ben, you from London, Christa, you from Dar es Salaam. I'm in Washington, D.C. I wish we were all together. But truly, thank you. For those of you who had friends and family who were hoping to join but weren't able to, we will be posting the recording of this to our website and also to WWF's YouTube page. So we'll be sharing that link out shortly after this event. Please feel free to send in questions you may have after the fact. We'll be sure to pass them on to Ben and Christa. And we wish everyone a wonderful afternoon, evening, or morning, wherever you are in the world. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you so much.
Let's fight for the beauty of this planet, shall we?
Indeed.
Yes,
Be there with
absolutely. Thank you all so much. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.